Hey guys, Brad Danger here, and somewhere in an alternative universe, Ford sold a 250 mile per hour quad turbo V12 in the 90s, Yamaha built a road car with an F1 engine, Cadillac went after Ferrari with the 750 horsepower V12 supercar, and Mazda unleashed a screaming rotary Le Mans car on public roads. We got none of them. Instead, most of these cars were built, photographed, driven around for a bit, paraded in front of the public, then quietly murdered by the same companies that created them, which just feels rude because concept cars are supposed to be stupid. I get that. You build some chrome egg with no mirrors and a steering wheel shaped like a Dorito, put it on a turntable in Geneva, and everybody pretends it matters for 4 days. But these were different. A lot of them actually worked, some of them damn close to production, and a few would have completely changed how we remember the company that built them. Go all the way back to 1966 and Jaguar already had one of these things sitting around, the XJ13. Jaguar wanted to go back to Le Mans, so it built a proper mid-engine prototype around a 5-liter V12. It made roughly 500 horsepower, which in the mid-60s was a pretty serious way to rearrange your internal organs. The thing also looked unbelievable. Tiny windscreen, giant rear haunches, that long tail, V12 sitting right behind your head. Even now, it looks like money. Problem was, Jaguar took its sweet ass time. By the time the XJ13 was ready, racing had already moved on. Ford was already throwing GT40s at Le Mans, the regulations changed, and Jaguar decided the whole program wasn't worth pursuing. So the XJ13 never got a race. That's also impressive. I mean, just imagine building one of the prettiest racing Jaguars ever made and missing the actual race. Chevy pulled a similar move with the Aerovette. And this wasn't some random styling exercise either. Chevrolet spent years screwing around with the idea of a mid-engine Corvette. Decades, actually. The original XP882 shows up around 1969. The idea keeps evolving and eventually you got the Aerovette. They experimented with rotary engines because GM was briefly obsessed with rotaries, then went back to the V8s when everyone remembers gas mileage wasn't the only problem with rotary engines. By the late 70s, the Aerovette had a 6.6-liter V8 and Chevrolet was seriously looking at production. I mean, just think about that. The C8 Corvette felt like this massive break with the tradition when it finally arrived in 2020. Chevrolet could have done it 40 years earlier, but management changed, the numbers stopped making sense, and Chevrolet went back to building the Corvette with the engine in the front. It would take until the C8 for them to finally finish the job. And guys, real quick, last giveaway, the winner got a choice, a Fast and Furious Supra or a Shelby GT350. Sean from Nevada took one look and picked the Shelby. Rocky from New York won the flame-spitting GTR before him. Greg from Seattle walked with $100 grand cash. 3 winners, real faces, 0 rigged wheels. This next giveaway is bigger, it's shorter, and you're gonna love it, I promise. That's all you get though. Links pinned in the comment below. Tap it, sign up, go see what these guys actually did with real prizes. Go. Now, back to the show. Now you have the Mercedes with the C111. This thing is so wonderfully weird. Gold wing doors, bright orange body, mid-engine layout, and depending on which prototype we're talking about, Mercedes stuffed rotary engines, diesel engines, and turbocharged engines into it. There was a 4-rotor version making somewhere around 350 horsepower, which doesn't sound insane now until you remember we're talking about the 1970s. Mercedes wasn't seriously trying to become the German Lamborghini here. The C111 was a rolling laboratory, which is sensible. I don't like sensible, because if Mercedes had sold a gull-wing rotary supercar in 1970, we'd still be talking about it today. Ford's GT70 came from an entirely different problem. Ford was rallying cars that weren't really designed to be rally cars, and the purpose-built mid-engine stuff was starting to make that obvious. So Ford built its own. The GT70 was tiny, mid-engine, rear drive, and looked a little something like a left GT40 in the dryer too long. It was supposed to fight cars like the Alpine A110. Ford even planned road versions because it needed to homologate the thing. Then development dragged on. The car wasn't immediately brilliant. Ford already had the Escort doing extremely well in rallying, and suddenly there wasn't much reason to keep burning money. Only a handful of GT70s were made. Audi's RS2 died for a much more dramatic reason. Group B died with it. And Audi had proven that all-wheel drive was basically a cheat code in rallying. but the original Quattro layout had a problem. The engine was way out front. By the middle of the Group B arms race, everyone was building ridiculous mid-engine cars, and Audi knew it needed something better. The RS002 was the answer. Mid-engine, 5-cylinder turbo, Quattro all-wheel drive, absolutely deranged bodywork. It barely looks like an Audi, maybe more like an innie, and that is a compliment. Audi was testing it when Group B got canceled after a string of fatal accidents, so there wasn't much point continuing. The RS002, well, it went away. Given how insane Group B had become, I'm not going to sit here and say canceling it was stupid. People were dying, but God, I would have loved to see what Audi did with another generation. Peugeot apparently looked at the late 80s supercar market and just thought, why exactly aren't we involved in this? So in 1988, they built the Oxia, a Peugeot with a twin-turbo V6 making about 680 horses, all-wheel drive, four-wheel steer, and during testing it reportedly went 215 miles per. Again, Peugeot. 2 were built. Neither turned into a production car. Today, Peugeot is mostly known for hatchbacks, crossovers, and making Americans say, wait, they still make cars? There was a timeline where the answer was, yeah, they also make a 215 mile per supercar. BMW's Nazca M12 landed a few years later. This one was designed by a guy named Fabrizio, and I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name, and had a carbon fiber structure wrapped around a BMW V12. It weighed almost 2,400 pounds. That combination sounds illegal now. A modern M5 weighs approximately the same as the rural hospital, and BMW had a V12 exotic in the early 90s weighing about as much as a Miata with some luggage. The original wasn't outrageously powerful, but later Nazca versions got much more serious. BMW never pulled the trigger. And that bothers me because BMW already had history here. The original M1 existed. They knew people wanted a proper exotic BMW. Instead, the Nazca became another poster car with no dealership story attached to it. Now we get to Yamaha. Yamaha, baby. I think they make pianos. Anyway, I genuinely don't know what happened inside Yamaha headquarters. These people, well, they make motorcycles too, and pianos, and outboard motors, and drums, hi-fi equipment. And apparently at one point somebody wandered into the wrong meeting and accidentally greenlit a supercar. The OX99-11 used a 3.5-liter V12 derived from Yamaha's Formula One engine. It revved to around 10,000 RPM. The driver sat up front with the passenger behind them in a tandem layout like a jet. It looked like a road-going prototype racer, then sounded completely obscene. This was 1992. The proposed pricing was also obscene, around $800,000, depending on which estimate you use. Japan's economy was collapsing, supercars were getting destroyed financially, and selling an $800,000 Yamaha turned out to be a difficult pitch. Shocking, only 3 were built. I still really want one. Chrysler's Atlantic wasn't quite as close to becoming a production supercar, but I have to include it because just look at this damn thing. This was 1995 Chrysler, the same general era that gives us the Neon, and somehow also created this huge Art Deco coupe inspired by the Bugatti Type 57 SC Atlantic. The best part is the engine. Chrysler wanted a straight 8, so they essentially created one using architecture from 2 Neon 4-cylinders. That's such an American solution. I don't even know what Trav thinks about that. Need an exotic engine? We have 2 Neons. Get 2. Same year, Ford showed the GT90 and decided subtlety was for cowards. This thing had a 6-liter V12, 4 turbos, 720 horses. Ford claimed it could do around 253 miles per in 1995. And because the exhaust system produced a completely stupid amount of heat, Ford reportedly used ceramic materials similar to what you'd find in aerospace applications to stop the car cooking itself. Just picture walking into a Ford dealer and buying that. Escort, Taurus, F-150, oh, and the quad-turbo V12 spaceship in the corner. Ford built one GT90. One. Meanwhile, Lamborghini had the Cala. I actually think this might have been one of the smartest cars on this list. It wasn't trying to replace the Diablo. The Cala was supposed to be the smaller Lamborghini. Think of it as the missing link between the Yelpa and the Gallardo. It had a mid-mounted V12, rear-wheel drive, and a manual gearbox. Giugiaro designed it. It looked exotic without trying quite as hard as modern Lamborghinis do. Then Volkswagen bought Lamborghini and the Cala died. A few years later, Lamborghini gave us the Gallardo, which basically proved the idea of a smaller V10 Lamborghini was completely valid. Nissan's R390 is where this whole concept gets stupid. Because the road car technically existed, Nissan wanted to race the R390 GT1 at Le Mans. Under the rules, that meant that there needed to be a road version. So Nissan made one. Twin-turbo 3.5-liter V8 carbon fiber chassis, around 550 horses in road trim. It looked like a Japanese McLaren F1. Then Nissan basically went, great, homologated, and didn't sell it. There are very few things more annoying than a production car that technically exists, but you're not allowed to have. Volkswagen did something equally bizarre in 1997. They built a supercar, not Lamborghini, not Porsche, Volkswagen, the W12, mid-engine 12 cylinders, Giugiaro bodywork. Volkswagen kept developing it and eventually produced the W12 Nardo, then used that thing to hammer around test tracks at absurd speeds for absurd lengths at times. This wasn't just a clay model. Volkswagen was proving its W engine concept worked. The production Volkswagen supercar never happened, but the engineering didn't disappear. That weird cylinder arrangement eventually became a major part of the Volkswagen Group empire. Bentley got involved with the Grenadiers in 1999. Mid-engine W16, manual gearbox, all-wheel drive, Bentley badge. That's such a strange sentence. Imagine Bentley actually selling a mid-engine 16-cylinder manual supercar. Instead, that engine architecture ended up being associated with something else entirely. Bugatti. Audi also played with the same basic insanity in the Rosemeyer. That showed up in 2000 with a gigantic W16 and styling pulled from the old Auto Union silver arrows. The Rosemeyer looked evil, not angry, evil. Tiny glass house, huge shoulders, barely any concessions for normal people. Guys, I love it. Audi didn't build it. Volkswagen Group eventually gave the 16-cylinder lunacy to Bugatti. So I guess we can't complain too much. Then Cadillac showed up with the Cien in 2002 and briefly became the coolest American car company alive. Again, mid-engine carbon fiber composite chassis, 7.5-liter V12, around 750 horses. It looked like Cadillac had gotten a defense contract, and this happened exactly when Cadillac was trying to convince everyone it wasn't an old man brand anymore. They had the angular art and science design language. The CTS was coming. V-cars were about to become a thing. A production Cien would have been the nuclear option. They didn't do it. Then 1 year later, Cadillac built the 16. The name was very literal. 16 cylinders, 13.6 liters, around 1,000 horses. The hood is so long that you could charge rent for the first 4 feet of it. Cadillac even designed the engine to shut down cylinders when they weren't needed, which is objectively kind of funny. Yes, we built a 13.6 liter V16. We're also very concerned about efficiency. Peugeot returned in 2004 with the 907, another concept powered by what amounted to be 2 V6s turned into a V12, 6 liters, around 500 horses, rear-wheel drive, and that transparent section in the hood where you could see the intake trumpets was peak concept car nonsense in the best way possible. Ford Shelby GR1 showed up right after that. This thing deserved to happen. A 6.4-liter V10 making roughly 600 horses, an aluminum body, rear-wheel drive, and styling based on the Shelby Daytona Coupe. It looked like a Cobra Daytona somebody had dragged into the 21st century. Ford built running versions. People drove them. There was serious discussion over the years about some form of limited production. Nothing. Ford had teased about reviving the GR1 idea more than once since then, which almost makes it worse. Maybach gave us the Accelero in 2005. This wasn't really a conventional production proposal. It was built as a one-off for Fulda to test high-performance tires. Still counts in my book because it's completely ridiculous. Twin-turbo V12, nearly 20 feet long, about 690 horses. It looked like Batman had inherited an oil company. The car actually ran over 218 miles per during testing. Maybach built exactly one. Then there was the Mazda Furai. This one genuinely sucked to lose. Mazda took a Courage racing chassis, wrapped in the bodywork that looked like half Le Mans prototype and half alien insect, and put a 3-rotor rotary engine in it. It ran on ethanol fuel blend. It sounded absolutely filthy, and unlike most concepts, people got to see it moving properly. Then during a Top Gear photo shoot in 2008, it caught fire. By the time the fire was out, the only Furia ever made was destroyed. Done. There wasn't another prototype just sitting in Hiroshima. That was the car. BMW showed the M1 homage the same year and immediately reminded everybody that BMW knows exactly how to make a gorgeous mid-engine supercar. They just don't. The M1 homage took the original M1 shape and updated it without turning it into some overstyled mess. People, they lost it for it. BMW never intended it for production. A few years later, we got the i8, which was cool tech, looked fantastic, and had nowhere near the violence everybody wanted from a modern M1. And finally, Jaguar managed to do this to us again, the CX75. This car still pisses me off. Jaguar revealed it in 2010 with one of the craziest concept powertrains imaginable. Electric motors with tiny gas turbines acting as range extenders. That was never going to be cheap or easy to produce, so Jaguar later developed a more realistic version with Williams. And realistic here means a tiny 4-cylinder engine that was both turbocharged, supercharged, revved insanely high, worked with electric motors, and helped the car make hypercar power. They built development cars, they tested them, the project got far enough that it wasn't some fantasy sketch. Jaguar planned to make a limited run, then the economics went bad and the production program was canceled, which would have been easier to accept if the CX75 then disappeared forever. It didn't. Jaguar kept some prototypes alive, and the car later showed up in the Spectra as the villain's car chasing James Bond Aston Martin through Rome. So Jaguar let the entire world see exactly what it refused to sell them. Great. And this is why I love digging through the dead concept program. Sometimes the company was right to cancel the car. The business case, well, it was garbage. The economy collapsed. Regulations changed. The technology wasn't ready. Racing programs got shut down. Fine. But when you look at the GT90, the OX99-11, the Cien, the Furai, the CX75, it's hard not to imagine what one stupid decision in the other direction could have given us, especially now, when manufacturers keep telling us enthusiast cars are just too risky. Well, maybe they are. I'd still rather see a company risk building something completely ridiculous once in a while than spending another $1 billion figuring out how to make a coupe version of an SUV nobody asked for to be a coupe. So out of all these dead supercars, which one are you bringing back? Me? I'm talking about the GT90, quad turbos V12, 250 mile per and a Ford badge. That's exactly the kind of bad financial decision I support. Let me know your pick down in the comments down below. Also like, subscribe so we hit 2 mil by the end of the year. Go to winthisIdealCar.com to get entered to win your dream car plus cash. Check out some of these ideal vids. I'm Brad Danger. This is Ideal, and promise me one thing. Keep living the ideal lifestyle.